How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the Eminence Legacy Podcast. My name is Alfonso Cadena.
And I'm Jose Luis Cadena. Thank you for joining us.
All right, so today we're going to be talking about time management. But before we get to that, how has your week been, Jose Luis?
It's been a little bit chaotic. Talking about time management, I think I need more hours during my day.
It's funny you mentioned that because it's true. A lot of us say that, I don't have time for this, I don't have time for that. And in reality, we all have 24 hours in the day, and yet you can always find someone that is making more with the time that they have. And what we're going to talk today about is the secret. What is the secret to that to be able to maximize your time? And I think we got some really good treats here that is going to be able to help us be a lot more productive during the week.
Well, I can't wait to get the secret sauce for the time management because that's what we all need.
Right, yeah. So, typically the way I go about my week is that, I try to make sure that there's quality time, for my family. So by the end of the week, I'll try to schedule like the task, like that have to get done during the week. That way, by the time it gets to the weekend, I have some free time on that. So find the areas that you're able to control, and control that. Last weekend we actually watched a really good movie. It was called Vengeance. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, I watched it recently and it's an awesome movie. Awesome.
It was really funny because, being from Texas, I think they got, of course, it's exaggerated, like everybody's just shooting their pistols left and right, I mean, yes, there's some of that, but that was the humor and the charm of the movie that it really exaggerated. One thing I think they got right was about people's love for Whataburger. There's just some stuff you
Yeah.
cannot criticize here. One of them is their burgers. The other one is just the state in general. If you're from Texas, you can't criticize Texas, even though we'll complain about the heat and we'll complain about the flooding. Just last week, we hadn't seen rains for weeks, and then from one single day, all the roads were just flooded. And you can tell too, it doesn't happen often because you'll find accidents left and right, unfortunately.
Yeah, we do.
Right. So let's go ahead and get started. So obviously, a lot of the stuff that we talk about, you're always going to see the same benefits from it. And so what changes is the strategy, but the reason that we try to find different strategies is because we want to see outcome. We all want to be able to have a life with less stress. We all want to have more energy. We all want to be able to achieve our goals more efficiently. But in order to be able to do that is we need to be able to prioritize. So how do we find the stuff that are important is what is the first thing that we need to come into the realization to. How are we able to identify what it is that matters most?
I guess always questions what it's worth. A lot of times people are going to ask you for help for something, but is that really important to you? Is that really gonna mess up your schedule? And a lot of times we already have a plan in mind, and then while we're doing something, we kind of get distracted with something else, and then we start working on something else. So there's really like I guess we don't focus on the end. We focus on the now, and we're not following I guess it links back to being a lot of, like emotional, because if you feel like you need to take care of something while we're already working on something else, and you get distracted because you feel the need to fix that other thing that's in the way, it's gonna, I think it has to do with your emotional or your thought process, that you kind of put something else on the side and give priority to something that really wasn't on the list before. But I believe it happens to everybody. I'm not sure if it's just me, but you were working on something, and then something is in the same vicinity, and you start working on that too. So, and at the end of the day, you don't get any of those two things fixed.
Right. It really comes down to because you talked about, how it is that you feel, and those things that pop in. But I think generally we'll be able to find a general pattern as to how our lives go about each week. And first of all, the first thing that we need to do is be able to audit, and find out what does our week look like and where does most of our time go to. Because as much as we like to think, that there are those times when yes, it is going towards other responsibilities or towards helping other people rather than primarily putting our face mask on. The reality is that there are a lot of time wasters within there, whether it's spending too much time on social media or taking longer than you should, time, taking longer to get out of bed. What is it that is really eating up that time that you could be using a lot more effectively?
I think that with the time audit, we'll come to realize that we are wasting time on other things. Like I said, when you're starting a task and then you get kind of diverted into something else just because it's around the area where you were at. I'll give you an example. Let's say you were gonna, I don't know, let's say you were gonna uh, bake something, and before you know it, you're cleaning the fridge, you know. But really, your intentions were just to do your baking or your cooking. But you opened the fridge, and now you took it upon yourself to start cleaning the fridge. Now, is cleaning your fridge important? Probably it is, but probably not at the time that you chose it because you already had another task in mind. And these are the kind of distractions that we see every day. And now that you mentioned social media, I mean, we do see like that we tend to every time that there's an opportunity, we check the phone. A lot of us, that's the first thing we check when we wake up, our phone.
Right. Definitely awareness, and the other thing that we could probably look at, it's the arrangement, so if you know that once you become aware that those distractions exist, how could you arrange your surroundings in a way that it won't be much of a problem for you to be distracted from the main task? And from that, you'll be able to adapt into new patterns, into new habits that are going to help you be more productive during the day.
And I guess that's where you start creating the adaptations and the habits that start building, and you start going from being more, I guess, proactive in your days.
Right. So one of the tools that I found super useful, is the Eisenhower matrix. Had you heard about this before researching into this topic?
Actually, Steve Covey has something similar on the seven highly effective people. And he has something similar, and I think it's kind of diverted from there. So I'm familiar with it. I haven't really looked at it. I've looked at Steve Covey's material, but when I was looking at it, it kind of reminded me of it. And I think that those are key things, tools to use to be able to at least start your time management.
So maybe you could tell me a little bit about the differences from the one I have here. So in the meantime, let me go ahead and just illustrate for those of you that are just listening. So what it is just what the Eisenhower matrix is just a quadrant. There's four squares, with a cross in between to be able to have four different sections for you. And for those that are watching the video form, so this is basically what it looks like. So as you can see, it's a quadrant and each one is labeled with a different color. And so the top left corner, what it says is the do's, and it's under the category of what's urgent and important. So what is urgent and important? That's what's going to go there. So, you know, like if you have like a meeting that's already that's going to be scheduled, that's mandatory, then or there's a report due, there's something that has a deadline in it, that's definitely going to go there, in the do section. And then right next to it, you have the not so urgent. So in the not so urgent sections in the top right corner, what these are things that you'll be able to, they're important, but you could schedule at a later point of the day. So while the first quadrant has to be done immediately, the second part needs to be done equally as important. However, because the priority is a little bit less, you can probably get away with scheduling it later during the day. As far as the bottom left, you're going to be able, there's the delegate section. So this is stuff that, like you mentioned, sometimes we get caught up, because people ask something of us, or they want, or they need a favor, or maybe it's just something that, you know, you focus too much from as a responsibility. And I'm sure you see this like in management roles, sometimes, you take on tasks that you think are important for yourself when really you could just be delegating it to someone else, because you know that it'll be just that, just as good, and you're not having to hold on to the steering wheel the whole time. So the delegate section is, basically something that you could, that there's some importance to it, but not so much where it needs to be hands-on. You could very well just pass the task, to someone else or get help with doing that. And then the bottom right section, so much time gets wasted there. So these are the stuff that are just distractions. What are the things that you could just delete? You can get rid of. You don't even have to worry about them. So as soon as you identify what those are, and of course you find that out by auditing your time, then you realize that, hey, all of a sudden you free up a big portion of your schedule.
I think it's important to remember, and in perspective, like when we are saying it, it looks kind of simple, but then once you start putting it into practice, it gets a little bit more difficult because we all of us are wired differently, and the people that are more hands-on are going to be struggling to let go of the task. But you have to think about it that if you maybe your time will be more valuable spent allow you to even expand your goals, and sometimes if we get caught up just trying to do that yourselves, you're gonna be kind of um uh you're gonna be investing time where you could still monetize or do something better with your time because you could delegate that. And then we have also the type of people that overthink, and you have a hard time trying to decide where to put the actual importance on it, because sometimes for some of us everything's important. So this is going to help you kind of jot things down and get that area get sorted in your mind, your train of thoughts, to be able to see, okay, this is more important than the other, and be able to kind of measure the importance of things. So writing it down, I think it's a big deal for those people that like to see things like in a more I guess analytical spectrum. And for those other
Right.
ones that are, and for those other people that are like always like have a hard time concentrating or whatnot, this is also going to help you to kind of have a schedule in mind to follow during your day, and to be able to stay on point with your goals and tasks you have during the day.
Yeah, this is definitely a task that you do want to write down, because it's not like, it's going to be really difficult to be able to like just imagine it in your mind and, categorize everything that you're doing within it. But if you, but like we mentioned, like if you take a look at your week, or even not, I mean, 7 days is a long time, but even if you look at a single day and break it up into this quadrant, written down, you'll be able to make a lot more sense of it. And that's the thing, I remember back then when I was when I was trying to fix, stuff within our budget, trying to increase our emergency savings and stuff like that. One of the things that was holding me back from trying that was the fear of seeing something I don't like. For example, I realizing that I was spending too much on food, or realizing that I was spending too much on my hobbies. And once we actually saw it, once we tore the band-aid off, we realized, you know what? Yes, there's a problem, but it's not that bad. It can be fixed. Or when we were looking at our debts, too, and trying to come up with a game plan to pay those off, same thing. We were afraid to look at it, but once we did, we were able to take action on it. And I wonder how many people that for them it's going to be the case where they're just afraid to reflect on their situation, to think, well, I can't find time for the gym, I can't find time to read, I can't find to um, you know to whether it is go to school or whatever, but the truth is that you are going to find time if you take the time to look at it. If you make it your priority to find more time, you're going to find it.
Yeah, and it gives us the ability to focus on one thing at a time, and that's very important. Going back to our last podcast, we were talking about focusing on one thing at a time, because this will allow you to focus in steps, and it'll give you the big picture, and always thinking about the end in mind that you have for your task or for your goals.
Yeah, that's actually one of the points that I have listed here, that you do need to focus on one thing at a time. If you're trying to fit everything within those 20 minutes, whether it's writing a report and at the same time taking phone calls and at the same time planning your afternoon, it's just what, like, all three things are going to suffer and you're not going to do any of those things successfully. So definitely focusing on one thing at a time is going to be key to all of this. and you'll find improvement on what you're working on rather than, I see it sometimes where, somebody's working, like whether it's on the like on a stationary bike, or um or doing some sort of exercise and talking on the phone at the same time. And it's like, and my immediate thought is, I mean, sometimes you have to take a call when you have to take a call, but when you hear a conversation, you're thinking to yourself, yeah, I don't think I could, be fully engaged in that exercise if I'm distracted by a phone call. I mean, I need to work on my breathing. I need to work on, on form and be able to focus on those things. And if I'm also making a conversation at the same time, I'm not going to be able to work on my breathing or work on my form. So it's definitely one of those things where you just need to focus on one thing at a time.
No, definitely, because once you get distracted, it's hard to get back in the groove. I mean, we might say we're able to, but it takes us a while. You don't just get back into the groove, like, and especially like, let's say if you're writing something down, you're inspired, as soon as somebody cuts your inspiration, it's kind of hard to go back to it. So focusing it is a big part of it, and always having the end in mind. Okay, what are we trying to accomplish here?
Right. So another strategy, so that was the Eisenhower matrix, which I think is very useful because, like I mentioned, it's going to be able to sort what is, what we've been talking about, what is important and what's something that you can definitely just drop. But let's talk about actually working on the task, so sometimes it is, like for example, right now you mentioned about a writing assignment, whether it's for an article or for, whatever it is that you're working on writing. So our attention span is limited, so but there's ways to be able to work around that. And one of the ways that we could do that is being able to chunk the the time allocated to the task and then have a break in between and then get back to the task at hand. So this method is called the Pomodoro method, which apparently it means tomato in Italian. I don't know. Um, but basically, it was done in the 1980s by a university student who was overwhelmed by his assignments. So what he decided to do, once you actually hear it, it sounds pretty basic, but it works, is to work 25-minute intervals within his in his schoolwork, and then take a 5-minute break after that. And one of the things that you do but with this method is, one, you give yourself a little reward, whether it's okay, after this 25 minutes are done, then I'll go for a small walk, or I'll go for my favorite drink, or I'll listen to the show or podcast that I was waiting that I've been wanting to listen to. So you give yourself that small reward, distract your mind, and then come back refreshed. So and you can toy around with the time too. It doesn't like have to be 25 minutes. You could do like 30 minutes and then 10 minutes, or 40 minutes and 20 minutes, so you can break it up based on what works for you. But this is another one that I personally use myself quite frequently because I'm the same way. Like I have to, my wife is the type that she could focus on a task for 2, 3 hours until she finishes it. And I'll get there, but I do need breaks in between, and it will take a little bit longer. But I think but in my personal experience, the way it works for me is that I feel that the results end up being better when I'm able to stay focused, but have those rewards in between, and it keeps me motivated to see all the tasks finish through.
Actually, that method I've used it myself, and if you go back in history, a lot of the early scientists or people that innovated things used that same method. It's something that works. I'm gonna tell you how I used it recently. I was taking a licensing test, and I actually went up to number 55, and then I took a break. I took a break, and I let the time keep running, because when you're taking a test, like, the time keeps running regardless whether you're taking it or not. So I took a break. I took like a 10-minute break, maybe 15. Came back and finished the test, and definitely made the test a lot easier, because I think it was like 99 questions. So it allowed me to decompress when I went outside, and just walking outside and being able to stretch and wash my face was enough of a reward for me. Um, because I don't think it, well, myself, I don't know if there's some people that like tests, but I'm not a real, like, big on tests. but that actually made it a little bit more bearable for me to actually go through with that test.
Yeah, now that I know exactly what you're talking about, especially because now when you go to a testing center, there's a timer that is individualized for yourself, and that clock is just ticking, so you feel like you have like less time than you actually have because it's probably enough time, but you feel so pressured by it that you end up rushing through the thing, and it has some. I do think that has some psychological effects, because if you study without a timer, and then all of a sudden you're taking a test with a timer, you're going to see a big change. And personally, I'm not a fan of tests. Um, I know there's two ways that we could, that we could solidify memory. One of them is through repetition, and the other, so if you repeat something, it'll eventually stick. But another form of memory or another method of memory is by, thinking of like a general picture or explanation, or forming some sort of depth, not just thinking of it superficially, but so for example, I think association is a type of that. For example, like, and Michael Scott, like in From the Office, does that, where he comes up with a silly fact to remember somebody's name. Uh, so through association, he was able to memorize everybody's name, even though like a lot of the nicknames that he would come up with were offensive, but it would help him remember, the concept. And that's the way I memorize things. I memorize, like, okay, what would this concept mean in a real life example? And unfortunately for learners like that, tests are just not formed that way. They're kind of formed for you to memorize the definition precisely and being able to answer, the question according to exactly how it's written down. And sometimes, I don't know, I personally find that uh pretty challenging myself anytime I'm taking a test. But I absolutely go ahead.
Yeah, but imagine taking away the pressure by creating a some sort of time management format. It will take a immense amount of pressure, and adding something like this method itself to your daily task. It'll make it more bearable and more manageable each task that you're doing. And
Absolutely.
Benjamin Franklin said the best. I mean, um, you may delay, but time won't. Time will keep going. So we need to kind of manage our time and be able to be intentional with it.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I guess it's a similar quote. I just heard it like differently, and I don't even know who the source is. And it sounds a lot like what you're saying, that it says a lot of people talk about killing time when in reality time is the one killing them.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, and you're right. The testing scenario is a really good example of it because you say to yourself, I still have 4 days to study. I'll just start tomorrow, and then the next day comes. I'll just wait till tomorrow. Before you know it, you need to what you could have done 30 minutes a day. Now you have to do it for 6 hours straight because you weren't able to allocate your time.
Yeah, and it happens to everybody. So one of the things that we need to remember is that mastering your minutes will allow us to unlock to achieve more. So once we master our minutes during the day, it's going to give us that ability to achieve more during the day. And I think everybody wants that. Everybody wants to get closer to our goals and to be able to finish the day strong.
Right, and so we did talk about giving yourself a reward too. So once you do accomplish a task, you could always treat yourself. Like I mentioned, I had given several examples earlier, but that's something that you could definitely fit into your scheduling. And lastly, but not least, there's definitely a lot of apps that help you block out distractions. So, I mean, a quick Google search and you'll find out several recommendations of different apps that you can add to your phone that could help you with this, that can help you stay focused and find all your time wasters, audit your time. So definitely take advantage of those.
Yeah, then most definitely. Anything we could use to be able to manage our time, we need to be taking advantage of that.
All right. So that concludes this week's episode. So where can I find you, Jose Luis?
You can find me on social media platforms under Sir Chain, which is SirChain. Sir Chain.
Yeah, you guys can find me on Instagram too. My handle is Cadena Alfonso. So look me up, guys. And everyone, have a great week.
Have a great week. See you soon.